When we think about getting older, our minds usually jump to things like wrinkles or gray hair, right? But what if I told you the real key to a long, healthy, and vibrant life isn't on the surface at all? What if it's actually deep within our very structure? Today, we're diving into why your muscle mass is one of the most critical and honestly most overlooked factors for aging well. Let's get right into it. So let's start with a number that might kind of shock you: 25%. Now, this isn't just some random stat. When we're young, our muscles can make up about half of our entire body weight, but by the time we get 75, that can get cut in half again, plummeting to just 25%. We're not just talking about how you look in the mirror. This is like a fundamental downgrade to your body's entire operating system. It's literally like trying to run a car with half its engine ripped out. And the tricky part is, this loss doesn't happen all at once. Nope, it's a really gradual, sneaky process that starts way earlier than most of us think, just silently chipping away at our body's foundation year after year. Well, this whole process actually has a clinical name: sarcopenia. It literally means flesh loss in Greek, which sounds pretty dramatic, and for good reason. This is way more than just feeling a little weaker as you get older. It's a recognized medical condition, a progressive disorder where we don't just lose muscle mass, we lose muscle function at a much faster rate than we should. Okay, so why is this such a big deal? Well, because the consequences are really, really serious. Sarcopenia massively increases your risk of falls and bone breaking fractures. It can make simple, everyday things we take for granted, like carrying groceries or just getting out of a chair, feel incredibly hard. And that, of course, leads directly to a loss of independence, and it's tied to a whole bunch of other chronic diseases, which means a much higher chance of ending up in the hospital. But to really truly get why muscle is so important, we've got to look past just strength and movement. We have to understand that our muscle is basically our body's main metabolic engine. It's working for you 24/7, burning energy, even when you're just sitting on the couch. And this right here is one of its most vital jobs. I want you to think of your muscles as a giant sponge for blood sugar. After you eat a meal, they just soak up all that glucose from your bloodstream, which keeps your levels nice and stable. So what happens when you lose muscle? You lose your biggest glucose sponge. Suddenly, that sugar has nowhere to go, and that can lead straight to insulin resistance and a much, much higher risk for type 2 diabetes. Now, this is where things get really fascinating. Just look at the data here. Having low muscle mass, just the amount of muscle, increases your risk of losing physical independence by about 1.5 times. That's significant for sure, but look at that next number. Having low muscle function, meaning your muscles are weak, that risk skyrockets by more than 6 times. This is so important. How strong and how well your muscle works is even more critical than how much of it you have. So this brings us to an even more dangerous and frankly more modern condition. What happens when that muscle loss we've been talking about combines with gaining fat? Where you get something called sarcopenic obesity, and it is a true double danger to our health. So what's the difference exactly? Sarcopenia, as we said, is losing muscle. Sarcopenic obesity, that's the worst of both worlds. You're losing that vital, metabolically active muscle tissue, and at the same time, you're gaining excess body fat. This combination doesn't just add two problems together, it actually multiplies them, making each one worse. And here's why it's so destructive. It creates this awful, vicious feedback loop. See, the extra fat tissue isn't just sitting there, it's actively pumping out inflammatory signals into your body. Those inflammatory signals then attack your muscles and speed up their breakdown. Then, with less muscle, your metabolism slows down, which, you guessed it, makes it even easier to store more fat. And the cycle just keeps going, spiraling downwards. Okay, I know this all sounds pretty alarming, but here is the single most important message of this whole explainer. This decline is not some inevitable sentence you just have to accept. We actually have the power to fight back. This is a fight against time, and it is absolutely a fight we can win. So, what are our primary weapons in this fight? Well, it really blows down to two key things. Number one, resistance training. Lifting weights, using bands, body weight exercises. This is the signal that tells your body, hey, we need to build and keep this muscle. And number two, proper nutrition. You can't build a house without bricks, right? Well, you can't build muscle without its most important raw material, and that's protein. You've probably heard it before: you can't outtrain a bad diet, and you can't just eat your way to strong muscles without the workout. As the research makes super clear, it's the combination that unlocks the best results. They work together. The exercise is like the architect drawing up the blueprints, and the nutrition provides all the bricks and mortar to actually build the structure. So all this brings us to a final, very practical point. Because once you understand how crucial nutrition and exercise are, a really pressing question tends to pop up, especially in a world that's just flooded with health products. And that question is this: should I be using supplements to improve my muscle? We hear about protein powders, creatine, vitamin D all the time, but are they necessary? Do they even work? That's the crucial next question to explore on this journey to healthy aging, and it leaves us all with something important to think about. We all want to stay strong and capable as we get older. But the moment you walk down the supplement aisle, you're just hit with this wall of promises. It's a tempting offer, right? So let's dive in and see what the science actually says. So that brings us to the big question: are these supplements a real shortcut, or is the reality a little more complicated? We're going to unpack the evidence, look at the studies, and find out if a scoop of powder can really replace a good hard set of reps. All right, first up, let's meet the main players in this story. The supplement industry has put a few key characters in the spotlight, especially when it comes to fighting what's known as sarcopenia, which is just the fancy term for age related muscle loss and function. I bet you've heard of most of these: whey protein and its star amino acid, leucine; creatine, a gym favorite; vitamin D, a sunshine vitamin; and maybe even HMB, which is a byproduct of leucine that gets a lot of hype. These are the big names we're told can help us build and keep muscle. But what happens when we actually look past the shiny labels? Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. We're going to put each of these so called stars under the microscope, looking at the actual scientific research to see if their performance matches their reputation. So the logic behind protein and leucine, it's pretty simple, and honestly, it's compelling. Muscle is made of protein, and leucine is like the main switch that tells your body to build more. Provide the building blocks, flip the switch, and you should get more muscle. It makes perfect sense on paper. But, and there's always a but, right? The results are all over the place. On one hand, some studies do show that leucine can help increase muscle mass. But, and this is a huge but, on the other hand, multiple controlled studies show that taking it by itself doesn't actually improve functional strength, like your grit strength or walking speed, when you compare it to a placebo. Next up, we got creatine. Its whole job is to provide a quick burst of energy for short, powerful movements. Think lifting a super heavy weight or doing a quick sprint. That's why it's so popular for boosting performance in the gym. The theory is more energy lets you train harder, which leads to better results. And this really gets to the heart of it. A major meta analysis found that creatine's power is unlocked when it's combined with resistance training. The key word there is with. It's not the creatine working magic on its own, it's the creatine helping you do the work that actually gets you the results. So, what about vitamin D? We know it's important for overall health and goes a link to muscle function. But when it comes to supplementing to build muscle, the scientific jury is still out. As one review put it, there's no real consensus because the studies are so wildly different. Different doses, different patient groups, different durations all lead to conflicting results. And this brings us to a really critical theme you see across all these studies. The research itself has limitations. The studies are often short, the results are inconsistent, and the clearest benefits almost always pop up when the supplement is paired with exercise. And maybe the most important takeaway here is that a change on a lab report doesn't always translate to real world functional strength. Okay, so if supplements by themselves are kind of shaky, what happens when we compare different strategies head to head? Let's turn to a huge network meta analysis that did exactly that, pitting nutrition against exercise to see what really moves the needle. I mean, this is the ultimate question, isn't it? If your goal is to get stronger and build functional muscle, where should you be putting your effort? In the kitchen and the supplement jar, or in the gym? Let's see what the data says. And wow, the answer could not be clearer. For real functional strength gain, just look at that first column. The top two lines show that exercise, whether it's with or without nutritional support, is the most effective strategy. Now look at that bottom row. Nutrition alone is the least effective. The data is just crystal clear. Exercise is the dominant factor, period. And here's the knockout punch from that same study, and I'm quoting directly here: protein supplementation alone failed to significantly improve any outcome. The bottom line is that relying only on supplements or nutrition just isn't an effective strategy for getting stronger. It just isn't. So that brings us to the undisputed champion, the one strategy that all the evidence points to as the most powerful, reliable intervention for building and keeping muscle as we age. It's resistance training, plain and simple. And this isn't just an opinion, it's where international consensus and clinical guidelines have established as the first line treatment for sarcopenia. Pushing, pulling, and lifting weights creates mechanical tension on the muscles. It's that stimulus, that physical signal, that truly triggers robust muscle protein synthesis, way more than just swallowing the goving blocks. And you know what? It doesn't have to be complicated. The evidence points to a clear protocol. Hit your major muscle groups 2 to 3 times a week with 2 to 3 challenging sets of about 8 to 12 reps. That's the blueprint for real results. All right, so let's pull all of this together. What is the evidence based formula for building a real, lasting strength strategy? Well, it's all about getting your priorities straight. Think of it like this pyramid of strength. The foundation, the absolute non negotiable, is resistance exercise. The second pillar is proper nutrition to support that exercise. And way up at the top, as an optional add on, is supplementation. You just can't swap the foundation for that tiny little piece at the very top. And really, that's the takeaway from all this research. While supplements might offer a little boost under the right conditions, specifically when they're combined with hard work, they are not a standalone solution. The magic isn't in the powder, it's in the synergy between smart training and good nutrition. So, to wrap this all up, I'll leave you with this one question to think about. When you look at your own efforts to get stronger and healthier, are you building on that solid foundation of exercise? Or are you kind of hoping that the supplements at the top can somehow hold the whole thing up? The evidence tells us where we should be focusing our energy.